we keep it 100. Hey guys, good evening. It's your girl, Claudia Jordan. Thank you so much for tuning into Out Loud. Now, instead of being in the studio, I'm still bringing you the show from the comfort of my own home because we're still about that quarantine life. Now, we want to get into something that's really, really important. I think you'll get a lot out of the show. The effects of racism have long been associated with depression, anxiety, and other serious, sometimes debilitating conditions, including post-traumatic stress disorder and substance abuse disorders. Tonight, I'm talking to a group of people about the importance of protecting your mental health, especially during a pandemic, the impact of transgenerational trauma on the Black community, and so much more. Please welcome clinical psychologist, Dr. Chanda Reynolds, three-time Grammy Award-winning artist, Caliph, and actor, Broderick Hunter. Welcome to the show, everybody.
Hello. How's everybody
Thank you
doing?
for having us.
What's up, you guys? Thanks so much.
I'd love to know, how are you all coping with all that's going on in the world? Because we haven't gotten a break in quite a long time. Whoever wants to jump in.
I'll jump in now. I mean, for me, I'm an artist, so it's kind of like turning into the music. But I think for me, it's been a lot more effective to cope by like doing things. You know, I feel like when I actually do things to help my community, when I'm actually like activating ways to help people, giving people different tools. Like we just recently put out some music with a way to help people donate to different foundations. That's been the most relieving and fulfilling feeling for me. Yeah.
Okay.
Me personally, so Claudia, you just said like we've been experiencing a lot of things over the past few months. Personally, I'm a person who strongly believes in my faith. So I'm a believer in Jesus Christ. So utilizing those faith-based coping strategies has been effective for me. And that's just what I've been relying on to help persevere during these moments.
Robert?
Yeah, and I could definitely piggyback off that. You know, definitely staying prayed up is very, very important. As an actor, you know, a lot of our mental health and everything that we do is excluded. We put it on screen, use our bodies, and I haven't really been able to do that much. So I've personally just been doing a lot of journaling. I've been really trying to put my thoughts on paper, practicing that. Meditation has been really big for me as well. So I just think that taking those practices has definitely helped my mental space be a lot more clear during this time.
I want to ask you, Caliph, what has this time taught you about yourself? Did you learn anything new about yourself? Because you have time to finally sit still right now. I mean,
yeah, I did. I actually learned that I actually like being a homebody. I didn't think I would ever like that. Ever since I was a kid, as soon as I was able to step outside, I'm out there, you know, and that turns into, you know, sports, and then it turns into becoming an artist. And once you are an artist, you actually kind of have to be out there a lot more. But the quarantine forcing me to stay home has made me realize how much of a homebody I am. I just need my tools there. So I've been able to record from home, create my designs and my work and my clothing and everything like that, and work on my foundation while I'm home. And I love that as much as I do going out and doing shows, you know. So I learned that I'm actually more of a homebody than I thought I was.
Okay. Chanda, how about you?
I would say the importance of making space for self-care. You know, prior to the quarantine, I was the person who was always on go, working on this project and that project. But being in this quarantine has definitely helped me to learn how to just still myself and just to be okay with being still.
Okay. Broderick?
Man, I've learned so much this quarantine. It's been really interesting because I've been finding things that I kind of pushed away that I thought would have been taken like months upon months to do or accomplish, actually took mere hours, some just a few days. And even creatively, like I've been able to exercise certain creative avenues, like putting up YouTube videos, haircut tutorials. That's been really maximizing off the time and stuff. So it's just the shift of creativity and all these juices kind of just been flowing. Being stagnant has been really beneficial for the most part, outside of everything else happening. But it's been really good to kind of see more of myself being creative and putting things on paper and putting things to life. So yeah, it's been fun.
I don't know if you guys feel this as well, but you know, before this, we were kind of on that hamster wheel, right? Just going, you know, just autopilot pretty much. And probably there's things that you thought, there's no way I could do this. But this time has forced us to figure it out, right? People are learning. I think there's going to be a lot of jobs that will be eliminated and things that may be, you know, finding new ways to do old things. You know, I know girls that didn't know how to do their own nails or their own hair, or they're just figuring everything out. You know what I mean? And people are realizing they're probably wasting a lot of money before. I think it's been time to figure out that I don't really need to be so frivolous and waste so much money on other things. You know?
I agree. 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's so true.
100% with you.
Caliph,
Some of us are taking that extra step to be more creative. Like I like a couple days ago dyed my beard because I was home. Just
You
wanted to
didn't
try.
me up. I thought you were a whole girl. I thought you were my age.
Nah, man. This is just a new thing I tried.
He said, I thought it was natural.
Is it difficult, Caliph, to create music when you're by yourself? Like, you have less stimuli, right? So it's less things to be inspired by, or is it easier to be alone?
I have less stimuli, but it allows me to focus more on my thoughts. So rather than kind of pulling from external influences, I'm pulling from within. So that's kind of been the change. But I think the challenge was being able to transition into that. But now that we've been quarantined for so long, I can jump back and forth from being like, you know, getting inspired by a movie or something external, and then just kind of digging deeper and kind of just speaking on how I feel, you know. And those breaks, like what Dr. Chanda said, those breaks are great. Like having to like stop and just not do anything or think about anything. That's important because I do a lot of my writing, all my writing in my head. So I have to like stop myself from thinking and kind of just hang out, and then it refreshes things for me. So it's been pretty good.
Broderick, how has the crisis impacted the film industry? I know a lot of people have shut down. I've heard some people come on here and say that there are gigs out there, but they want to pay super low money.
Yeah.
Has it just totally shut down for you? Are you still able to do self-taping? I don't know.
I mean, the thing about it is everything's been kind of always, self-tapes have always been the thing, but now like kind of the new thing has been Zoom auditions and stuff, which has been very interesting to me because I like being in the room and reading off people and feeling the energy. So doing a Zoom audition where I'm talking to somebody through the camera, it's just completely different vibe. So that's been something that I've been personally getting used to. But in the film industry and TV world, like a lot of shows just got kind of put back on the chopping block. And nobody really knows, and unless you're going into like season 2 or something like that, nobody really knows if they're going to, you know, go into that pilot that they might have been up for or something. So it's been a really tough time for a lot of actors that are trying to both break in and maintain where they've been in their career. But for the most part, I think it's going to be a better shift because right now there's been a lot more light on bringing more diversity into these rooms, these writers' rooms, these directors, these showrunners and stuff. This Black creators have been able to be celebrated more. So I think in the midst of all of this, there's still a lot of good that's going to come out of it.
Hopefully that's the light at the end of the tunnel when it comes to the entertainment business, because it's been marginalized for far too long. You know what I mean? Like, put the back burner. Oh, we already have one Black show. We have a guy that looks like you at our agency, and that's it. Just one. Okay.
I just put out a tweet, and I didn't know how many white actors and actresses were voicing Black characters, and that was one thing that kind of turned my head a little bit. I was like, "What? Yes! Oh my God!" It's I literally just tweeted it like about an hour or two ago, and it's been getting a lot of conversation. But
on the voiceover space, the cartoon.
Yeah, the voiceover space. Like, imagine you, Claudia, having a cartoon character written for you, about your life, but then you've got some white lady that's voicing it
with no bass in her voice.
No bass, but it's like, but that's what, but Hollywood thinks that's what makes sense, and it doesn't make sense to me, nor does it make sense to us, because there's so many of us out here that have the talent to do these jobs, that are or more than qualified to do these jobs, but the immediate thing that Hollywood likes to go to is the white people to continue to keep them employed. And that doesn't make any sense to me, especially when you have stories that are around Black voices. So it's just been a lot of eyebrows.
Hollywood's been trying it, though. I mean, Hollywood has been trying it from Cleopatra to watch any old Western. They got a gang of white boys playing Indians with dark wigs on, and like they think having a little piece of leather around their forehead makes them look Indian. I'm like, if y'all don't get out of here with this nonsense.
The entire movie, The Prince of Egypt, had all white voice actors. Explain that. Egypt. Wow. White voice actors for The Prince of Egypt. I had no idea about that. As a kid, when I watched the movie, I was like, okay, like this is a great movie. I like this. But when I came to find out that nobody looks like me, acts like me, or I can identify actually had to do with the film, then that's when I was like, wait, hold up. Excuse my French.
No, you can say some cuss words on the show. We good.
Some. I'll be my only one, but I'm just kind of speaking out loud here.
No, please. That's the name of the show. Out loud. Say it out loud. What people are thinking. Jenny Slate says she'll no longer voice the black character on Big Mouth. That story just came out today. Big Mouth is a cartoon on Netflix.
And I didn't even know that. See, I'm learning so much.
Wow.
I did not know that.
Because when the opposite happens, and like with the Little Mermaid situation.
Oh my God. They don't lost their mind.
Actress to be Ariel, like it was like an uproar.
And it was uproar.
The thing is, like that uproar is well received. You know, when it's the opposite, it's almost like, oh no, they're going crazy. But that uproar was published on every publication, and everybody was talking about it. Like, oh, they don't like the fact that Ariel is being depicted by a black woman. It's so obvious, you know.
A fictional character.
Oh yeah.
Dr. Chanda, I want to ask you, why is it important to do mental check-ins with your friends and family, especially now? And is that something you?
I think it's so important because, you know, like we said, over the past few months, we've been experiencing stressors from COVID-19. People have been losing their jobs, seeing so many different murders in the media. You know, people are experiencing stressors, right? And those stressors can be manifested in various ways, including depression, anxiety, PTSD, race-based trauma. And when you do have those strong friends, they're less likely to open up about what's really going on. So it's really important to know how to check in with them. And that can be something as simple as like, yo, how are you taking this information that just been released in the news the other day? Like, how was your day today? What are you doing to cope with your emotions? So it's so very important. And I think we have to be very intentional about doing that.
I think we've gotten so used to it too, right? That we think it's not that big of a deal, but it still is. Like, just because it's happening a lot and we're getting used to it doesn't mean it's like
doesn't mean it's okay.
It's not okay
at all.
So weeks ago, it was reported that Jazz Waters, one of the writers for the television series This Is Us, committed suicide. In one of her last tweets, she wrote, "I'm tired of sheltering in place with my anxiety. Most days is nearly debilitating. If you're struggling just to keep the fear of the unknown in check, know that you're not alone. I'm with you." So she kind of put a cryptic message out prior. And what are your thoughts on that? I mean,
it's so unfortunate. And, you know, I think that's why it's so important for us, even like in the Black community, to just really be communal right now and to just check in with one another, because mental health is real. And it's really important for us to just really acknowledge that and to provide the resources for other people who may not know how to ask for help. But it's a very unfortunate situation.
I do like that in the last couple of years, it seems that Black folks who have always, it's long been frowned upon, right, in the Black community, in the Black family. You know, it's almost like admitting weakness. And I don't know why we take that burden on, and we don't allow ourselves a luxury to be vulnerable and show weakness. And I just like to see that more people are coming forward and speaking on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's historical.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I meant to say, like, I think that a lot of these things come from stigmas that are put in our communities by not us, by other people, other groups of people, because it's almost like a control. It's like a part of this whole control system. It's like it's frowned upon, like, let's say, as a Black man, Black woman, to like show emotion in our communities, like, you know, especially a Black man. You show emotion, they say that you're weak, this, that, and the third. But then in return, what happens is you're harboring all of that, you know, and then when that comes out, you do react in a way where it's like a lot in one moment, and then it's kind of like, there they go, being exactly how we say they are. But it's really just from harboring all these emotions that we're not allowed to, you know, express and like be open about. And I think everybody cracks. If anybody that goes to a point where like they can't hold things in anymore, they crack. So I think that happens a lot in our communities, and it's generational. So
let's pick back up on this anxiety talk, because I think it's something that deserves our attention and our energy. We'll talk more about that when we come back right here on Foxhole. We're going to take a quick break.
America, land of the free. It's at the core of who we are. Freedom. The freedom to live without fear, to drive through all 50 states, to sleep safely in our own beds, the freedom to jog where we please, to watch birds in the park, to wear a hoodie, the freedom to breathe. Before we celebrate the freedom most Americans have, we must fight for the freedom all Americans deserve. Because no matter your religion, gender, disability, age, race, all lives can't matter until Black lives matter.
Welcome back to Out Loud right here in Fox Soul. Now, before we went to break, we were talking about anxiety, especially as an African American in these times, and what is we're starting to accept as normal really isn't. Have any of y'all had have experienced anxiety, depression, where you felt it was debilitating or you really felt it? Because I know with anxiety, I had it. It feels like someone's knee is literally in your chest and you just cannot get enough air in your lungs. That's what it felt like to me, and just panic. Can anyone else speak on that? Anyone else experience anxiety, depression?
Definitely on my part, especially like I feel like these past few months especially have intensified that because normally, you know, I feel like I can speak to myself, only for myself when I say this, but normally I can like go outside, go be with some people, friends, whatever. Social distancing came about, and I started to realize that certain things that I would had access to do to kind of control my anxiety or depression were taken away. So I had to find new ways to cope with those things, and some were unsuccessful, some were. You know, I tried to stay away from the bottle and substance and stuff like that, but it's still a learning process to kind of deal with those things.
Thank you for sharing that. We don't often get to hear that from men, especially Black. The society doesn't seem to think you all have feelings that, you know, that it takes away from your masculinity, if your coolness. But it's not. I think it's bullshit. Like I love that.
Yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I feel like it's just been these moments now more than ever where I personally feel more free to express where I truly am and how I am mentally and physically. So I just truly try to encourage other Black men out there to be honest and open about where they truly are, because just like what Caliph said, we've been wired to compress everything for so long and not allowed to speak up and talk about certain things. But that only makes things worse in the long run, because then we end up lashing out and just being like a Coca-Cola bottle and you just pop open. So it's been helping a lot just to vent and get some stuff out of my chest.
We have a viewer comment that I would love for any of you to answer, especially you, Doctor. Cocoa Butter Barbie says, "Oh my, that's incredible. I've never felt asking for help shows weakness. My concern is that I ask, don't feel helped, and then what are my options after using my last resort?" Doctor, what do you say to that?
So that's actually a really great question. I would say if you feel as though you're not getting the help that you need, it's really important to just continue to seek that help through therapy. There are professional resources out there, such as therapists, psychologists, clinical social workers, all of these individuals that you can have direct access to in order to help you with kind of processing your emotions that you are experiencing. So I would definitely say just continue to seek that help and to gain access to those resources that are available.
As far as looking out for our friends, Jen J, another viewer question says, how do you overcome the lies? Very rarely does someone come out and say, I need help. So what should we look for? Caliph, have you ever?
Actually, my anxiety and depression was attached to being here illegally. So I kind of like also had to lie on top of that. But I remember there was a situation when I was younger, one of my friends was kind of like going through it, and I had to actually like tell him what I was really going through in order to like relieve him of his stresses. And that I didn't know was going to be just as relieving for me. And it was. I think I was like 15, and it was the first time I told my best friends that I was here illegally. And like that release was huge for me because it showed me on both ends that it can help other people and it can help myself. And that's kind of like what I've become as an artist, is like somebody who speaks on these things openly to like relieve myself and others from the issue. Because I think as humans, when we know somebody relates, we feel a little better. We don't feel as alone as we feel. And when you're dealing with anxiety and depression, you think you're alone. It almost like convinces you that you're alone. So when you have those moments to allow yourself to kind of move past that and speak with others and open up and let go of these lies that you thought were so crippling if you didn't tell them, it's definitely a relieving thing.
You must feel in this country, especially the last few years with this attack on immigration and DACA, just this president, you have a different perspective because you said you were here illegally at first, right?
Yeah, so I'm clearly a Black man. I'm an immigrant, but I was also born Muslim, so that's like a triple whammy, you know. Friends of mine say, you know, if you were also like, you know, gay and a woman, you would have everything that this country kind of like discriminates against. And it's like, I mean, I don't differentiate myself from anybody that is gay, a woman, Black, white, or anything, because I think we all have similar struggles. You know, we all get targeted for just being who we are. But yeah, absolutely. As of late, it's been a little tougher. I was speaking on it earlier. The Supreme Court just kind of blocked Trump from getting rid of DACA, and I'm a DACA recipient. So that was a big relief. And that was going on in my head while we were protesting and everything. It was kind of like you said, it was like double the pressure. But I try to turn that around, and I get inspired by it to just like, you know, I feel like, you know, if I'm dealing with that and I'm feeling some type of way, that means somebody else is. And as an artist, I've made it my responsibility to speak for people that are dealing with what I deal with. So I just kind of like turn the energy around as best as I can and turn it into music.
I can't imagine that amount of stress. I mean, we already have enough stress being Black in America, but then having that looming over your head, like we've got a president with a hard on basically for immigrant, like, you know, just this is his thing. And the anti-Muslim sentiment, the just everything but white European sentiment, and just having that extra weight on your shoulder on top of everything else. So Dr. Chanda, I want to ask you, how do the stressors of racism affect our mental health?
Yeah. So that's a great question, Claudia. First, I just want to acknowledge the fact that we have two Black men who are discussing the mental health and their experiences with that. So I definitely want to commend the both of you. But yeah, so racism can definitely impact our mental health. There's actually a growing body of literature and research that suggests that when a group of people experiences ancestral trauma, such as slavery, which was very violent, and that they continue to experience racism and oppression on a continuous basis, they're more likely to experience symptoms of stress and trauma and PTSD and anxiety and depression. So it's definitely a correlation there.
So it's not, you know, for years, and it seemed like before this 2020 awakening, it's almost like they were laughing at us like, you're pulling the race card, they're not taking it seriously. They thought we were just like kind of crying wolf. And finally, all these people that are not people of color saying, oh my God, I had no idea.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say funny, it's ironic. It's a lot of things, right?
The thing is, when there are tragedies like this, there's always a paradigm shift where people do come into a knowledge of, one, who they are in terms of their race and their identity. Two, other people are starting to acknowledge how they may have contributed to these oppressive systems. So I think that we're definitely experiencing that right now with people who are beginning to wake up and to not be ignorant by choice. So it is ironic, and also it is something that was, you know, I think it's a good thing that we're moving in that direction.
Absolutely. Caliph and Broderick, I want to ask you, how does it feel when, you know, as Black men, watching these killings of Black men at the hands of police brutality, and what does that do for you daily? Like when you get up and go out your door, what does that feel like? Is it a daily something, this could be the day, or is it in the back of your mind, or is it right front and center? Like, how does it feel as a Black man in America for you seeing these content? I saw 2 more videos today.
Man. God, it's so, I'm happy you asked that question, but it's also so unfortunate because it's like seeing this kind of stuff happen continuously. It's not just saying, okay, this George Floyd, it's Trayvon Martin, it's Black women, it's all of us, but it's coming down to all these people look like us. All these guys, they look like me. If I wasn't who I was, or whoever, doesn't matter. These guys look just like me. If a cop misidentifies me in a certain way, guess what? I could be put in the same exact position. Next thing you know, one of us could be a hashtag, and you can't even pull. It doesn't even matter whether or not you're successful, whether you have $100,000 in the bank, $1 million in the bank, or $10. They don't even look at that. They just look at you are a Black man. and that's it. You have no value. It almost makes you feel like you have no value here. So consistently, it kind of just puts me into perspective of thinking like, dang, okay, is today my day? Am I next in line? You know? And I hate feeling that way, but it's the truth because it's broadcast is right in front of us every day, something new, and it's not changing. So it's such an emotional topic, but it's the truth to say that I'm not okay. I'm not, and I really hope one day we all get to a better place. But I've come to terms with saying it's okay to not be okay.
That part.
I think a big part of it too is, you know, as Black people, we have thick skin, you know. So it's kind of like, oh, they can deal with it in a sense. That's kind of like the reaction of the world. It's like, oh, they can deal with it, especially for Black women. But as a Black man, I can attest to everything that Broderick just said. Like, it's not easy every day to see something. And it's like, you know, we're on social media looking at this, that, and the third, and just like always seeing somebody else that looks like me. And then the most recent thing with the hangings and all that, it gets like very extreme. And when I step out, actually last week I was a part of some protests, and then the next day I stepped out and like cop car drove by me and rolled their window down and like kind of drove by a little slow. And I didn't know what to expect. In that moment, I kind of was like, all right, well, let's see what happens here, because, you know, they're also attacking protesters if they can identify them, you know, because they're going against them. So as somebody who openly raises my voice, and I always have something to say about, you know, injustices in this country, I definitely know that, you know, it's a dangerous thing to do, but I feel like it's as dangerous for me not to do it. So we just have to kind of ride with it right now, but that's why we're doing what we're doing, so that we can change it.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if you all have had conversations with your friends, your Black friends, at one point in your lives where you're like, you know, discussing slavery or, you know, the things that used to happen, right?
Yeah.
Oh, if I was around back then, I would have done this, I would have done that. And then, boom, 2020, here we are. And it seemed like we were going forward for a while, but then I don't know if it's with the fact that we're just catching it more on camera. Has it never really gone away? Or this new resurgence with this KKK enthusiasts? And this is doing, what I'm saying is basically, it is doing a number on our mental health.
Yeah.
We shouldn't have to be living through a nightmare, something that we would only imagine back in the day. Like, I can't believe they went through that, and then we just kind of put it away. And now we're getting to see that. I saw a Black man today on camera being slammed because they thought he was a guy they were looking for in the warrant. They look at his ID. Oh, it's not him. They broke his ribs.
So
I saw
pissed.
another kid that was who played. He seemed like he was maybe autistic in the spectrum, and he played the violin for cats at shelters. They rolled up on him. He had a mask on because he was cold. He's anemic. And did you see that?
Yes.
And they injected him with something, the fireworks. That's another thing where they're traumatizing our communities right now. There's fireworks in the inner cities right now, getting everyone like,
yeah.
You know, I don't know what they're preparing us for. We're going to talk more about that. We're going to take a quick break and get more into this when we come back right here in Fox Soul.
This is the message. This is a message
for all the true fighters.
To all the true fighters.
True warriors.
The true warriors.
The true champions.
We know that every battle comes at a price. You see it on our faces,
and we see it on yours.
So to the doctors, to the nurses,
to the first responders,
for your bruised faces,
for your battle scars.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for answering the bell.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for going
Toe to toe.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your courage and your
sacrifice.
All of us.
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 All of us are in your corner.
Welcome back to Fox Soul. We are having a very heavy but necessary conversation, and I would like to echo Dr. Chanda, what she said about, you know, having two Black men on here freely speaking about mental health. I love the bravery, and I'm hoping it encourages more of us to do the same, because, you know, women, we usually have our girlfriends to bounce off of, and no one says you're weak or whatever. I understand the stigma with Black men, so it is very appreciated. So once again, kudos to you. And I hope, no, I don't hope, I know men that are watching this right now, it will encourage others to do the same. I also don't want to leave out the ladies, Doctor. What are some of the traumas that Black women are facing in our communities? Because a lot of times we're the ones left behind when they take our sons and our husbands and our boyfriends and our fathers. We have to put the pieces back together. And that's another unimaginable kind of pain that we shouldn't still have to be dealing with.
Yeah, you know, it's so many stressors that Black women are experiencing right now. And I think you hit the nail on the head when you said, Claudia, about family. Like a lot of us are just trying to manage our stressors related to family. Like when I allow my child to go out the house, when I allow my husband or my spouse to go out the house, are they going to come back or will they be a hashtag? And that goes back to that sense of hypervigilance that we were discussing related to race-based stress, right? So feeling as though, you know, we've experienced so many things in this population. The Black community has been experiencing the George Floyds, the Rayshard Brooks, all these individuals in the media. And it's like, okay, will we be next? So I think that's definitely one of the stressors that Black women are experiencing. And, you know, you guys alluded to it earlier, but there is the myth of the strong Black woman in the Black community. So feeling like we have to be woman all the time, feeling like we have to internalize our emotions in order to, you know, get through the day. But I think it's just really important for women just to be in touch with their emotions right now and to know that there are resources out there if you need them.
I spoke about this on my show a few times. I encourage Black women to take that damn cape off because we put it on ourselves.
Yes.
I'm a strong Black woman. I don't need, yes, it's okay.
Period.
Needing something, and especially needing our fellow Black men as our partners to help us. There's nothing weak about that. Actually, us together is just super, super strong and beautiful and the way it should be. You know what I mean? Like, I just feel like all this pushing each other away, for a long time, music reflected this hostility towards love and Black women and Black men. Brothers ain't shit and women, they just help. And it's like, we got to get past that and start looking at each other the way we used to. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Agreed.
Exactly.
It affects us, doesn't it? Don't messages in entertainment and music and film affect us subliminally? They do.
Absolutely, they absolutely do. And as a hip hop artist, I feel super responsible to not mirror those how do I say those like mentions of Black women in a certain light, or like you know, I'm usually talking about love and not the opposite, because it's like very traumatic that we did grow up continuously listening to this over and over and over and over. It almost becomes a part of our language, but we're not realizing that we're affecting each other negatively, generationally, so on and so forth, you know.
And it's so powerful. Like sometimes some of the most ratchet words are over such a hot, catchy beat, and we find ourselves like laughing, singing along, and then you can't help but to have that reflect in your life and some of the things you start being okay to put up with. Not saying one song is going to make you be okay with, you know, the okie doke, but when it's constant, and it seemed like it was going on for a long time. Like when I have R&B singers on the show, or even rappers that speak about love, I'm like, oh my God, as a woman, you know how starved we are to hear these things again? That's why I love 90s. You know what I mean? Like we seem like we liked each other. So, Doctor, I want to ask you, what is transgenerational trauma?
Yeah. So transgenerational trauma is basically trauma that is passed down from generation to generation. And so I had explained earlier about, you know, slavery was a very traumatic process, right? It was very violent. Black people were forcefully brought here and forced into slavery. And based on those traumas that we experienced during slavery, some of those same behaviors, the attitudes, you know, the belief systems that we adopted as slaves can be passed down to generations after that. And that is why we see like the hypervigilance related to authority figures, or when we see the police, like we're on edge, right? So those are products of transgenerational trauma.
So that's just passed down genetically?
Absolutely, it can definitely be passed down genetically. I think it's important to note that anytime the body goes through some sort of stress response, our fight or flight system is activated. And when this fight or flight system is activated, different parts of the brain, different parts of the endocrine system, and all these different systems in the body can release hormones in excessive amounts, right? And so think about when these hormones and these different systems in the bodies are activated via slavery, and we're continuing to pass that same type of trauma down from generation to generation. So that means we're having generations of this type of trauma that's kind of like embedded into our bodies. So it can definitely be transgenerational in terms of our physiology. There are actually studies related to epigenetics that shows how trauma can be passed down from a physiological level.
So what kind of symptoms would that be, or how would that manifest itself? Would it be, I mean, high blood pressure, anger?
Absolutely. So,
issues? I mean, what kind of?
Yes, absolutely. So there are different categories. It can be emotions, it can be behaviorally, it can be physiologically. So you hit the nail on the head when you talked about high blood pressure, significant stressors. In addition to that, you know, feeling increased anger, you know, feeling angry about feeling invalidated, feeling like you're not being heard, right? So these are emotions that can be directly related to transgenerational trauma. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind. Also, there are different mindsets that can be passed down transgenerationally, right? So when we're thinking about trauma, one of the mindsets that can be passed down is having a foreshortened sense of the future. So what that means is individuals who may not be able to kind of see themselves past the right now. I'm not able to see myself past the next 5 years, right? That's why sometimes when you ask somebody, like, what do you want to be when they grow up? You know, they might say, I just want to be alive. Like, that's a product of transgenerational trauma, not being able to see yourself beyond that specific point.
And then that I could see how that would tie into reckless behavior and not thinking long term. And some of the things that people say, oh, Black people do this, that, and the other, that are stereotypes. But that makes sense why we would behave and do certain things that we do. Fellas, how do you feel about what she's saying? Is any of this hitting home?
I'm just shutting up and listening. I'm learning so much.
Yeah, that's what I'm doing, right? I'm just listening. She's hitting it right on the nail.
This is great. I love it. I learned a lot.
Doctor, could this be a reason why, you know, we're so disconnected? Our culture is so disconnected. The trauma.
Yeah, it definitely can. It could be, yes. So trauma can definitely disconnect you from community, not feeling as though you can connect with other individuals within your community. So that's another impact of trauma, right? So in slavery, when families were separated, having to function without your mom around or your dad around, you know, that's one of the products of slavery, of transgenerational trauma, feeling like you're not able to collectively connect with other individuals interpersonally, and even finding those negative coping skills. So basically coping skills are strategies or skills, methods that you utilize in order to help yourself feel better. And so when we are experiencing like these negative thought patterns and these significant emotions related to transgenerational trauma, if we're not taught proper ways to cope, then we can definitely go to, you know, substance abuse or utilizing sex as a coping skill, you know, all these different negative coping strategies that we can utilize as opposed to finding healthier ways of managing some of these traumatic responses that we might be experiencing.
Doesn't that just make sense with how we are in relationships sometimes, like the over-sexualizing of Black women and men, and, you know, there's all this whole thing about commitment when you're ripped away from your family and you're forced to breed, and all this nonsense that they did with us and tearing the families apart. I can see how that would manifest in our DNA.
100%.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Oh, okay. We know we have it. So how can we treat this trauma?
Yeah. So I definitely commend individuals like you, Claudia, for giving us the space to be able to talk about this stuff. Other figures in the media who are really making it known that race-based trauma is real, such as like individuals like Taraji P. Henson and Charlemagne the God, people who are able to stand up and talk about these issues, because I think now that we're getting clarity on what we are experiencing, we're able to heal. I think it's so important for us to be very intentional about our healing, because dismantling white supremacy is exhausting. So we have to make sure that we're doing things intentionally in order to make sure that we are coping with this. So one of the strategies that I definitely suggest for individuals who are trying to cope with some of this transgenerational or race-based trauma is to, you know, don't be afraid to take social media breaks. There might be times where you might feel like, you know, if I'm not on Instagram or if I'm not on Twitter, I'll miss something. However, it can be very detrimental to just mindlessly scroll on social media without really taking into consideration what you're feeding your mind, what you're feeding your thoughts. And so giving yourself that break from social media will allow you to regroup and just to take a break from some of those racial cues that we might be seeing. Additionally, so I talked about being a person of faith. So faith-based coping strategies are definitely something that have been proven to be helpful through research. If you even think back to, civil rights and even slavery, that's how our ancestors got through, by, listening to music that uplifted the spirit, because individuals of the African diaspora, we're spiritual by nature. So utilizing those faith-based coping strategies can be very helpful with reducing some of those physiological symptoms that we might be experiencing. I also would encourage everybody to just go to therapy. I know I keep, saying that over and over again through this sitcom, not this sitcom, I'm sorry, this episode, but I think it's so important for us to really just take some time and process how we're feeling, because at the end of the day, like I said before, it's exhausting, fighting racism, it's exhausting fighting white supremacy, and we have to be very intentional about our healing. And what better way to be intentional about it than to sit down with a professional so that you can unpack your emotions, develop a healthy sense of racial identity, and to really talk about some of the experiences that you have had. So
you are fit. I just want to sit back. I want to sit back and hear you talk. I'm like,
I'm just listening right now. I'm loving it.
I'm just like, okay, well, more. You feed me.
Fellas, I saw both of you have a reaction when the doctor mentioned getting therapy. You both were like, you made like a little, oh wait, we got to take a break. I want to talk to you fellas and see if we can get a commitment about therapy. When we come back, we got more. We'll take a quick break. We'll be back with more on Out Loud on Fox Soul.
One in 3 adults has pre-diabetes. That means it could be you, your favorite brother, your other brother, you, your football buddy, your football buddy, you, your plumber.
Breathe right into your foot.
Your plumber's masseuse.
Yes.
You, your dog walker, your cat jogger. With early diagnosis, pre-diabetes can be reversed. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Here's to the things that can keep us safe. Those we use all the time with hardly a thought. Those that are silently standing by to save our lives. And now, those that we carry with us everywhere we go. Many mobile devices will now bring you wireless emergency alerts, real-time information directly from local sources you know and trust. With the unique sound and vibration, you'll be in the know wherever you are.
Welcome back to Fox Soul. Wow, this conversation is everything. And the good doctor was just spitting right now. So before we went to break, I said I would come back and ask our two men here their thoughts on therapy. Is it something you've done or ever would consider?
Hey, Claudia, do you want to mention the story after the break?
Yeah. So, therapy? Yeah, yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, 100%.
100%. It's needed.
Have either of you been?
I have not been. I've been definitely coping through like my art and my music, but I've been looking into it myself. And with this foundation that I've created, we're looking to provide that to our Black communities and immigrant communities ourselves. So in a sense, like I can't, tell people to do something and not do it myself. So I'm looking to getting therapy while providing for my people.
Are you nervous about doing that? Because it's, you have to be really vulnerable on that. And everything in America, in our society, in our community, tells Black folks to not be vulnerable. That's weakness, right?
Right. Man, I definitely can agree with that. They tell you not to be vulnerable and to hold everything in. But I put off therapy for a long time. And I just experienced it like not too long ago. And I highly recommend it. And that was one of the reasons why I started my organization, Free to Joy, which is geared towards getting mental health programs for the youth for free. But I think, I'll chime in on that later. But it's just really, I feel like it starts with you knowing that it's okay to get therapy and understand that it's good for you at a young age, because we don't know that or understand it until we're older. Until we get to a certain point where a lot of things could have been avoided or even segued into a better life if we would have taken advantage of it at an earlier age. I wish I would have taken advantage of it in my high school years, but I'm about to be 30 and, I'm fresh into it. So I wish I would, that's definitely something I want to teach younger generation to definitely seek and look into it. Young black men and black women, especially going into their life. It's better to do it early. I feel personally.
Well, no regrets, right? Because it really didn't seem like it was even the environment for a lot of people to feel safe to even do it without the judgment, right?
Yeah. Well, times have changed. Times have truly changed now. We got social media. People are talking about it. Like back when I was growing up in my teenage years, internet wasn't really a thing. Nobody was really sharing like that. The internet is still relatively new. Now we've got these social media platforms where we have so much knowledge and more information out there to even seek the right therapist. That was my problem. I didn't want some white lady telling me, hey, here's your problem. You can't identify with me. Mm-hmm. So why would I go and pay money to hear you tell me about XYZ when you have no idea where my roots of where I come from? As Miss Chanda would say, my the generational trauma, so it goes a lot deeper than just having issues, in my opinion.
Which brings us to the next comment from our viewers. Coco Barbie says, please ask, are there any tips for choosing a therapist? Because that's got to be tough, right? Like you got to really be comfortable with who you're going to be pouring out your heart and soul to.
Absolutely. I mean, I think Broderick might have touched upon that well, like, somebody who can actually relate and knows about the generational trauma. Like he said, as a black man having a white lady. And it's funny he said that because, like, if you think therapist, like, that's what pops up in your head is this white lady sitting there with a clipboard, But I think finding somebody that can understand, and I'm sure Dr. Chanda can elaborate on this more, I think somebody who can relate to you would be the best decision for me, at least. That's what I would think.
Doctor?
Yeah, I would say that often is the stereotype when people come to therapy. Like when people come to my office for the first time, well, through telehealth, they're like, "You're the doctor?" And it's just the reaction is just really telling of what people view as like therapists. And I think, Broderick, you brought up an excellent point where you said, one thing that inhibited me from help seeking was basically not being able to connect with the therapist who didn't look like me. And that's something that so often keeps people in the Black community from seeking therapy, because there aren't many Black therapists out there. So you really have to know where to look. But I would encourage you, I can share my information regarding my app. I have a Black therapist directory there. And additionally, so like once so I'm more than willing to share that information with you all. And so, when you do find a therapist, make sure that you're asking questions about their views on, how has cultural and diversity, their views on culture and diversity and what that looks like to them. How has that impacted the Black community? Like, what are your thoughts on that? And not being afraid to ask these questions, because if you're going to be sharing some vulnerable information with this person, you want to make sure that they can relate to you and that they're able to see you.
Exactly.
What's a good amount of time? Is there a good amount of time, like a minimum someone should spend in therapy? Or is it just like, can you get something out of a few sessions? I mean, it was something that should just, once you start, it's ongoing. Like, what do you think about the time that you should really invest in it?
So it's contingent on the individual, the things that they're wanting to work out in therapy, their treatment goals. So you might have one individual who might benefit from 12 to 16 sessions. Another individual might still want to be in therapy for a year. So it's all up to that individual and what they're seeking from therapy.
We have another viewer question, a comment. Bo L says, you have to find a therapist you connect with. Just because they are a Black therapist doesn't mean you will connect with them.
I agree.
That's true.
That's true.
100% agree.
And I think within our community is another big part of it too, is, financially being able to afford a therapist. And I think a lot of Black communities, a lot of people in Black communities, they feel like, without having health insurance, so on and so forth, that's something they can't even fathom to think about looking toward, because it's like, if I don't have this health insurance and I can only worry about just in case something happens to me, I got to save my money for that. I can't, quote unquote, waste it on therapy. That's kind of like something that's a big part of it as well. So like Broderick himself is doing, my nonprofit SAFE is focused on providing that and helping, find ways to make it easier for us to feel comfortable doing so financially, even like on top of that,
that and the accessibility to it. Yeah, man. So 100%.
Sorry, I gotta take a quick break. When we come back, we're gonna talk more about your careers and end on a high note here and celebrate you all when we come back right here in Foxhole.
What to expect when you're expecting.
Like here.
A teenager.
Today, I'm going to show you how to teen-proof your home. First step, hide the car keys. Preferably somewhere they would never look. Challenges will come up. Be ready for them. Hi, honey.
I'm ready for the... Mom, you don't use mannequins in the mannequin challenge.
You don't have to know it all to be a perfect parent. Thousands of teens in foster care will love you just the same.
Chanda, Deborah Dan,
Megan Holiday, Nina Pop, Stephen Clark, Nia Webster, Christopher
George Floyd. His name was George Floyd. Say his name.
Say his name.
George Floyd. Say his name.
Say their names. Once again and always, we fight for justice. Black Lives Matter. Go to blacklivesmatter.com.
Welcome back to Out Loud right here on Foxhole. We're having a fascinating conversation about mental health and the effects of racism on our mental health. And are we really okay? And it's okay to not be okay. But, you know, we covered a lot in that area. And Doctor, you've been fantastic with giving us tips. And to my two fellas here, you fine Black men, and I mean fine human beings. I appreciate you. Your bravery and not being afraid to be transparent, because it's difficult, and you show that it's not. And I will tell you this, I had issues with anxiety, depression, and I kept it to myself until someone who I looked up to and I thought was, you know, had it going on, was okay to and told me like what she was going through. And I'm like, wait, if this person who I look up to is going through it, then I could definitely talk about mine. And it's been smooth sailing ever since. So what you all are doing tonight is just so meaningful and so appreciated. So just want to say that, and want to switch gears before we leave and talk about your careers. Caliph, I want to ask you, when did you realize you wanted to be a musical artist, and was that the original plan?
Well, no, the original plan was actually to be a computer scientist, like going
really?
into IT. Yes, but it actually happened as a result of being discriminated. In the sixth grade, I got a free ride, full scholarship to a university. I went through school, honor roll, and then by the time it was time to apply for FAFSA and so on and so forth, I was still illegal. So before 9/11, they were allowing immigrants to get educated in America the same way if you just had the money for it. But after 9/11, they were putting a lot of blocks in the way. So financial aid was not available for me. So my scholarship was actually taken away from me. And it was throughout high school, I was battle rapping, and it's funny, I actually threw myself into battle rapping to deal with my social anxieties, to make sure that I like force myself to like face it. You know, it's kind of like, I call it like, it's like It the Clown. As soon as you get through it, it's like smoking guns, you know, it's not really anything. But yeah, that turned me into like a hip hop artist when that moment happened. And my parents, they brought me here. They worked so hard for me to be here, to get a better education and a better life. And that being taken away from me, I felt was more taken away from them and their hard work. So I told myself that I'd be an artist and I'd like replace the degree with some, you know, some hardware or something like that, or get my papers through my music. So that's what actually inspired me.
You did make good on it, because you've won 3 Grammys. So how did that feel?
Yes,
congratulations too, brother.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yes, that was actually an amazing moment for me. For me, that was more important for me and my family, for my mother and my father. You know, like I would always let them know, like, I know you guys wanted this degree and this career, but like I got something different coming. Like I have to speak on the things that are blocking us from prospering in America, that are blocking us from prospering as Black people, immigrants, so on and so forth. Turned that into my passion, and that led to me winning 3 Grammys as a part of an album that I did with John DeVersa, Doug Davis, and Kabir Nelson. A beautiful piece.
We only have a couple minutes left on the show, and I definitely want to show a quick clip of your song, Jog Your Memory, Melanin. Okay, let's check it out.
See a Black man winning, they gon' throw an L in it. They fearful of your melanin, they fearful of your melanin. Jog your memory. Don't let that shit bring you down, king. Just stand strong and brush the hatred off your crown, king. They might see your potential and hold you down, king, but that's the gesture of justice. They some clowns, king.
All right. I hear the positivity in your music, and we need that. Please do more.
I love it.
Will do. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Broderick, I want to get to you real quick. Were you skeptical about working in an industry where it's like 95% rejection? I mean, that does a number on our mental health as well.
Of course, I was always very skeptical, and even my parents, they were always very like, oh, education, this and that. But when you do anything your heart is passionate about, you always find a way to find that silver lining and that, and that positivity. So I went into it fully knowing that, hey, I know I'm going up against the odds here, but if I stick with it, stay prayed up, I'll know everything that's for me will work out for me. So I tend to not really think about the rejection. I only think about, okay, well, those 99 no's, this one yes is going to catapult. So it's all love.
Speaking of one yes, make sure everyone supports you in your film on Amazon. They come, they go. So
yes,
we look forward to seeing that.
Thank
and Dr.
you.
Chanda, I want to ask you, what inspired you to work in the mental health field?
Yeah, so I would say, I always liked helping people, but it wasn't until I actually recognized the mental health disparity that exists in the Black community where I really wanted to make a difference. I could have stayed at the master's level, but I figured, why not go all the way? Because it's less than 5% of psychologists who identify as Black. So I figured that I wanted to be that representation because that matters. So yeah, and also acknowledging the fact that there are mental health disparities in the church. I identify as a person of faith. So seeing those disparities and wanting to be the person that bridges the gap between the Black clergy as well as the mental health professionals and how we can kind of dialogue better to serve African-American communities, that's my passion, so.
Bless.
Well, this has been fantastic and lots of just great, useful information that I know a lot of people that are watching will be touched. So I appreciate all three of you. I celebrate y'all, and I appreciate you coming on Out Loud. So I want to thank Dr. Chanda Reynolds, Caliph, and Broderick Hunter for sharing their insights tonight. Thank you so much for watching us on the Fox Soul TV mobile app. Soulmates, please stick around because we got a really fun, hot show with Mike and Donnie, the Mike and Donnie Show. That's all up next right here on Fox Soul. And once again, thank you so much for doing the show. We appreciate you.
Much love and thank you guys.
Yeah, so much love. Thank you so much.
Yeah.